A reflection upon the life of Blessed Mother Teresa is so important to the life of the Church at this particular moment in history, because we see, like, in reflecting upon Mother Teresa's life, that she was called to step outside the bounds of religious life. She was called to step outside the bounds of religious life to which she had made permanent and lifelong vows and commitment to. And she did this as a response in love to Jesus Christ's direct request for her to do that. Not many of us can claim to have had Jesus come to visit us and speak audibly to us and tell us directly what he wanted, like she did. But I don't think that anyone should approach that lightly if they're sincerely going to ask God to come to them in prayer and speak audibly like that. Back in the Old Testament we see that the Jews had such respect for the name of God itself that they didn't want it to be spoken lightly, because it had the power of like lightning and thunder in the heavens and the universe. So we have to be mindful that because God spoke directly and audibly to Mother Teresa, yes, it was a great blessing and perhaps a great comfort to her in many ways. Once she began her ministry, it was also a huge burden, to know so directly that exactly what God wanted from you, because it imposes a huge responsibility on the person who has that happen to him. And I have not audibly heard God speak to me, but nevertheless I have heard him speak to me very profoundly and directly and intimately, without having to audibly hear the words of God or the voice of God. I can't even imagine what that was like. And so anyway, I mean, there even within reflecting upon the manner in which God chose to call her, there is fruit for the Church to make use of in helping others to discern their vocation. And this is something that I feel particularly called to do, because I have struggled myself mightily with trying to discern what it was that God wanted me to do. Like when I first came back to church, there were very few people in the parish that I belonged to who were even close in age to me, and the ones who were close in age were all either married, or well, most of them, 90% of them, 99% maybe even, were married, and out of that, 80% of those had families and kids and had already determined the course of their life in a large degree by that choice to be married and to have children. My desire for Christian fellowship was limited by the lifestyle choices that other people in the Christian community that I belonged to had made. I couldn't enter into the type of serious and committed fellowship with people who were married and had families, in the same way that I could with other people who were in similar situations as myself. So what I experienced was a poverty of finding other men and women to enter into Christian community with, to a degree and level that I felt particularly called to at that time in my life. And so I don't want to do any injustice to sharing this story with you by skipping parts of the reflection on this, because again I think it's related to Mother Teresa's life in terms of what we can learn, but also in terms of what my particular calling is in the Church. In some way can be characterized in part by learning from the fruits of my own struggle, or the fruits of reflection upon my own struggle can be used to perhaps help other people who are going through similar experiences as I did many years ago. And that experience was that when I first started to go back to Mass and receive the sacraments again, and live a life of grace, I was naturally drawn to want to, find other people to share that with. And my experience of God's presence was so different than almost all the people that I met. The only person who I could approximate some level of conversation on a consistent basis with was one of the local parish priests, who was at that point already in his 60s and had obviously a strong sense of where God was calling him to serve his life out, in that particular diocese, archdiocese of Boston, in that particular parish. And so for whatever reason, he didn't feel called to step outside of that clearly defined box of vocation, which I'm talking about Mother Teresa. The experience of her life is that yes, we can serve God within the clearly defined box of religious life, but in the case of Mother Teresa, and perhaps in the case of many other religious people who have the courage to reflect and answer the call of Jesus in their life, to live out and respond to their vocation to love the poorest of the poor, that that they too can begin to respond to the needs of those who are in greatest need of God's love. This is the thing about Mother Teresa's life. Again, I'm belaboring this point, but it's only in an effort to do justice to what I believe God has shown me and taught me about it, not just for my own benefit so I can go around and think, wow, man, look at all these beautiful things God has revealed to me, and just keep them to myself. No, I want to share them with the church, because I truly believe that they originate from God. One of the sad parts of my life is that I have really in the past few years begun to understand and to identify and relate with that aspect of the Lord's life, when he was constantly with the disciples, and they just did not understand and get what he was trying to teach them and indicate to them. Have I been with you now for 3 years and you still don't even have an inkling of understanding of what I'm trying to get at, and like one of the crosses that Jesus carried, which which we as disciples can expect perhaps to carry in our own life, is the cross of being misunderstood by other people, who don't have the capacity to live beyond the narrowly defined boxes that they have chosen to live within in their understanding of Christian life. And I do not say that in any sense to diminish them, but I say it with the same spirit that Jesus said to the apostles, have I not been with you for 3 years and you still don't understand? He wasn't saying that to diminish them or belittle them. It was an authentic expression of his frustration of wanting to share that deep love and communion that he had with the Father so passionately. He thirsted so passionately to share that reality with other people that it was frustrating for him at times that they weren't able to get it. It was so simple, but they were limiting themselves by the